Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman that I had the pleasure of recently connecting with across social media lines. We actually had an opportunity to be acknowledged as distinguished authors. What a privilege that was. Just to get things started, she is an author, of course. She's a singer, she's a songwriter, she's a speaker. But her most important characteristic, her most elevated attribute of all is that she's a woman of God, and she's taken out time out of a very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening with the hopes of encouraging and sharing with us a little bit of her journey, looking to uplift us, and particularly when it comes to dealing with the adversities and challenges of life as we all go through them. And so, with that said, it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this evening, Miss Carol Chisolm. Carol, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into our segments this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little snippet about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our audience a taste of who is Carol Chisholm.
Certainly. Again, my name is Carol Chisholm. I am a singer, a songwriter, an author, a speaker, a mother, a grandmother, a teacher, a teacher by profession. And I was raised and born and raised in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but I currently reside in Florida and got here by way of military. My husband's retired military. And so that is a little bit about me.
Awesome, awesome. Audience, as you can see, we have a guest with us this evening, a woman of many talents, and we're going to dig deep into her journey. She's going to be so kind as you can graciously share a little bit of that with us. So I know we're going to be blessed this evening. So I'm not going to waste any more time. We're going to jump right on into this thing, Carol. Anytime I bring my guest on the show, one of the things that I always like to take a few moments to do is to reflect back on where that journey begins. I really do believe that a lot of things that go on early on in the process, early on in that journey, whether it's people that you meet, whether it's certain events that happen in your life, good, bad, or otherwise, that while they don't always necessarily make sense at the time that they're going on, especially things that happen even as far back as childhood, when you move forward in life, you kind of get more in your seasoned years and starting to understand more about what your actual purpose is. I believe, the light bulbs sort of start to come on, the dots start to become connected a little bit more, where it starts to, come to your realization that, you know what, this is why I had to go through what I had to go through. This is why I had that encounter or met this particular person or that person. And so with that said, if you would, take us back to the beginning of your journey. We're going to go all the way back to your childhood days, growing up in Oklahoma City. And if you would, kind of share with us, what was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any particular challenges that come to mind that you care to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us the foundational basis of where your story begins.
Of course. Well, I grew up a PK. My father was a pastor for many, many years. And my parents always said I could sing before I could speak well. And so I remember singing my first solo in church at 4. And I absolutely love singing. That was me. That was who I was then, who I am now. And a lot of the things that I experienced in church kind of helped or hindered that process in many ways. Uh, for those of who are PKs, you probably understand what I'm saying. People aren't the kindest sometimes, and you think that they would be and should be in the house of God, the people of faith. And so I many times would sing, and it was always the preacher's kids are up too much, they're doing too much. It's like, why can't I just do what I love doing? Why can't I do what God has put in me to do? And so I rebelled on that and just stopped singing for a while because of when you're young, you don't think of, okay, you're doing this for the glory of God. You just think you're doing it because you love doing it. But then when people don't receive it well, it's challenging and it's hard. So I kind of just drew back and thought, okay, I'm not singing anymore. And so Went through many years of that where I wouldn't sing until I actually left Oklahoma City, got married, and went to Europe. And so, um, just a lot of different things. That was what I loved doing, but
Mm-hmm.
I stopped doing it there for a time because of what people thought and what people said. So those were some memories that I have. Um, Things that my dad would try to really nurture and encourage in me, I would shy away from because, you know, they're not going to accept me. They're not going to like what I, because I'm up front. They don't want us, my siblings and I, to be up front. Well, why not? We're just serving God, trying to please Him like everybody else. So those are some memories. Those are not very fond memories right there, but
Well, I guess first off, let me say that I appreciate your transparency and sharing a little bit about your upbringing. But I also draw from that, something that I think, kind of ties into the whole reason why we take this opportunity to even reflect back, because here you are doing the thing that you love, doing the thing that you feel God purposed you to do. But you had that season early on in life where what you loved was actually turned against you, so to speak, to a way it turned you off because of how people responded to it, whether it was feeling like you're getting too much attention, or perhaps maybe their own personal insecurities about you having a gift to do something that they wish they could do. But whatever the reason is, that's how, for my listeners, if you don't understand how this goes, is that when you're gifted, particularly when you're gifted by God to do a particular thing, there you're going to go through a season where you struggle to sort of fit in. You struggle to
Mhm.
sort of get that fulfillment of acceptance. And what you don't realize, and again, understandably so, especially as a little kid, what you don't understand is that that resistance, that absence of you not feeling like you fit in, that's actually not a negative thing, because you weren't created to fit in. You were created to be set apart. You were created to be different than the crowd. And while that is something that, if we're being honest, in our own human condition, can be very lonely sometimes, it can be very frustrating, because you want to feel like you're a part of the collective with everybody else. When you understand the big picture, the true meaning of what your gift is all about, only then do you start to begin to understand why some of that separation had to be necessary. So now, with that said, does that mean God wants you to be a person who walks around lonely in life with no friends, no loved ones, no companionship? Or no, we're not saying that. But as He's cultivating and maturing and elevating that gift within you, there has to be times where He has to separate you to make sure that your focus is on point, your discipline is on point, your perspective is on point. That that, again, how often, I'm sure you've seen this many times, it's all out there, how many people are gifted with the ability to sing, but because of misguidance, because of the wrong crowds, wrong settings, they take what was actually meant to be a gift of God, and they use it in a distorted, perverted, or some type of way that's not in alignment with what He designed it to be, which again, we goes back to why that separation, why that isolation sometimes is necessary, for you to lock in and really get to the core of, okay, why am I doing this? And that is more than just something fun that I like to do, but that it has a
Right.
much more deeper meaning to it. So I'm glad that you mentioned those things as you were sharing that part of your story, because I think people need to understand and kind of make those connections, and not necessarily feel like it's something wrong with them, or just not living their lives based upon the approval of others,
Right.
because that can be a very empty existence in itself, when everything that you do, big decisions, little decisions, or otherwise, are driven by what everybody else thinks about it, instead of actually confirming with the ultimate source of who we're supposed to rely upon. Is what does God think about it? What does He say
Right.
about it? And if I got His approval, even if the rest of the room doesn't approve, then that really doesn't matter, because the opinion that meant the most is the one that I got confirmation from.
Right.
So again, I appreciate you sharing that. So, Carol, as you know, again, you had your experiences in childhood, and Eventually, of course, we branch off into our adult years, and more experiences will come. Some good, some challenging, some frustrating. And the reality is, however, is that if you live long enough, you do this thing we call life long enough. There's going to come points in time where you'll get hit with a storm that for lack of a better way of saying it, just hits a little different. Hits in a way that it's not easy. It's not an easy fix. It's not something that I can just throw some money at to make go away. It's not something I can just pick up the phone and call in a favor to make go away. Sometimes we find ourselves facing storms that feel as if they're insurmountable. Like we don't see a way through, we don't see a way around, we don't see a way over it. It's just you and that storm facing each other one on one, and it can be overwhelming. It can be, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry and stress can come about from that. And we
Right.
might feel a sense of helplessness, like, what am I supposed to do? How will I ever bounce back from this? And so with that said, if you would share with us a time that's exactly kind of how you felt, like you were facing a situation, you didn't know what to do with that. You had your worries, you had your doubts. Obviously, you're here today, so we can trust that God worked it out for you. But maybe back then you weren't so sure how that thing was going to play out. So if you would kind of walk us through an experience like that, that you encountered, and what was ultimately the turning point where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of it.
Certainly. I, for many years, suffered with alopecia. And for those who may not know, alopecia is an autoimmune disorder that attacks your hair follicles and causing you to have baldness. So basically, my immune system thinks that my hair is a foreign object and it works to eliminate it. So that happened when, after I had my first child, he was about 9 months old. We were living in Europe. And at the time, I traveled from Europe to Oklahoma because I wanted my family to see my son. And while I was there, I had vocal cord surgery. And I also had a Jerry curl, so a touch up on a Jerry curl. So, that was many years ago. We're talking about
Hmm.
Jerry curl, right?
Right, right.
And so when I stayed home about 3 weeks, when I got back to Europe, it hit me. I could run my hands through my hair and I would have a handful of hair.
Mm,
So that was the onset of alopecia areata, where I had patches of hair that were missing. Now, growing up, I always wanted hair. Wanted long hair. I had very thick hair, but I wanted to be like, I wanted to be able to whip it around and things like,
right, right.
run my fingers through it and stuff. And the irony that after wanting hair, wanting long hair, even though it was thick, I could do anything with it. But then coming to a point where I would lose it, to the point where I could do nothing. I couldn't hide it. So I went through many progressions with alopecia, because when it first started, my hair that was super thick thinned out really bad. And I had a bald spot in the top of my head that was un I just couldn't even hide it. I couldn't disguise it in any kind of way. And so from that point, I started wearing, I learned to braid with extensions. I did my own hair because, again, we were living in Europe. There were few hairdressers that knew how to do hair, our hair. They were few and far between. And so I learned how to do my own. And because one, I was too embarrassed to go someplace. Didn't even consult a dermatologist because I was too ashamed,
Mm,
and because we had to go to the German economy, and I didn't want them looking and laughing at me and speaking in German, knowing that they were talking about me.
mm,
So I learned to do my braids, and for a while that worked. I could disguise the thinning, I could disguise the bald spots until it didn't work anymore. And then I learned to do quick weaves or weaves on my hair, so I could braid it, sew it in. Hey, I could cover it up, but still, in all of these progressions, I was still sinking deeper and deeper into depression, deeper and deeper into self hatred, because I didn't like the way that I looked. Why did this happen? What, God, why did you let this happen? Why me? You go through so many emotions about it because of what a society would think, because of what maybe your interpretation of what the word of God says about it. And so from the quick wheeze, it continued to fall out. It just continued to fall out to where I had nothing on the top of my head. I can still grow hair around the back, but nothing on the top. So I was then confined to wigs and felt like I was in prison. I felt like I was in so much bondage. Now, all this time, I'm born again. I'm saved. I'm what they call sanctified and filled with the Holy Spirit, right? But that didn't stop me from being depressed. That didn't stop me from being fearful and shameful. And the self-loathing and hatred was just out of this world. That it caused me to even push my husband away and just I felt like he deserved somebody better than me, somebody beautiful, somebody who wasn't sinking into this deep, deep, deep darkness that I felt of hatred and just he deserved better. So I would do things to try to push him away. So it just got over the years progressed to I was just fearful. I was ashamed, but I hid it very well. I continued to smile on the outside, but on the inside, there was so much pain. I sought different kind of remedies. I made up remedies trying to fix it. I prayed and fasted trying to fix it. Um, I went to a hair clinic trying to fix it, but there was nothing. So I was out of hope. I was hopeless. There was nothing that I could do but continue to sink deeper and deeper. And at one time, I was ridiculed by spiritual authority. Somebody, my pastor, called me bald headed from the pulpit. And so that sent me in a whole nother space because we were in Europe and I that was our community. The church was our friends, they were our family. My family was thousands of miles away, had nobody else that I could talk to, nobody else that I could lean and depend on. So come for me to acknowledge or to even confront the person who called me bald headed from the pulpit, it was unconceivable for me because we would lose our lifeline.
Hmm.
Is what I thought. So we left Europe, we came back, got stationed back in Florida, and just continued to sink deeper and deeper in hopelessness and self hate.
Wow. Wow. Um, well, let me first say again, thank you for your transparency and sharing that. I am curious to know, before I kind of dig a little deeper in what you just shared with us. For you, what was ultimately the turning point? Here you are, feeling at kind of at the at your rock bottom, if so to speak, and dealing with all of this, and feeling like even those who are supposed to be closest to you in that immediate circle, or even now, being ridiculing and just making certain insensitive type of comments. What ultimately had to take place, or took place, I should say, that kind of started you heading in the right in a new direction where you began to embrace where you are, and what does this mean moving forward? What was that part like for you?
That was my prayer has always been that I want God to get the glory in my life. And in 2018, I was praying that prayer, and a thought came to me. I know now it was the Lord, the Holy Spirit, but a thought came to me, just take your wig off. Just take it off and just be free. Just go free from all of this. And so I asked my husband what he thought. I asked my kids, what do you guys think? And they both, all of them were like, if that's what you want to do, we got you. We just want you to be happy. We love you. And my husband, you're beautiful. I don't care. Yes, I'd walk beside you. I said, will you hold my hand? He said, yes, I know. And so I'm getting that courage, right? And it's like, yes, 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 I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. But as soon, right when you're getting ready to take that plunge, sometimes that's the hardest time.
Right.
So I backed off of that cliff. I'm like, I said, there ain't now. That's probably just my thought. Because God wouldn't want me to be humiliated. He would want me to suffer the ridicule of people and the shame. And so, I won't do it. So I went a whole nother year. And I say it was my year of disobedience because it was almost a year to the date that I'm praying this prayer. Lord, I want you to get the glory in my life, weeping and crying. And this time, it wasn't just a thought. I could clearly hear God say to me, how can anybody give me glory if they never know your struggle?
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, okay. I know what you mean, Lord. I know what you want me to do. And it was at that time that I got up from my knees. I went to the bathroom. And like I said, I could still grow hair around the back. So for some reason, I was holding on to this little bit, this braid that I would braid. I'm like, why was I holding on to? Maybe it represented hope for me. I don't know. But I held on to this braid and I just got the scissors, I cut it off. I took my husband's shaver and I shaved both of the left. And I looked in the mirror at myself and I thought, okay, God, what have you done? What am I doing, God? What are you doing? Why? And so I said, okay, I'll put on some makeup and see how it's going to be. So I put on my makeup and I stood back and said, girl, you don't look half bad.
See? Uh-huh.
So it was at that point that I went to my piano room, my prayer piano room, and I just began to play and worship the Lord, and just kind of, just kind of getting lost in God. And it started to rain, and he said to me, "What does the rain represent?" And I began to cry because it represents a renewing, a refreshing, a reviving, a washing away of the
Mhm.
old. Sometimes when we were kids, we used to go outside in the rain and the debris would come down the side, down the street into the drains. And I'm like, that's what God was doing for me. He was taking that debris, that shame, that fear, that self hatred, that self loathing, that low self esteem. He was washing it away into the drain so that it would just go and be flushed out of my system, never to return again. And so that was my epiphany, my turning point where when God said, and that was in April of 2019.
Wow.
I call it
Wow.
my reborn again day.
Mhm.
'Cause
How
he broke a
appropriate.
lot of yokes.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow, wow. Again, I love the story. And I think, the crux of it all is something that we all, many of us commonly deal with, and that is this struggle of when we find ourselves facing adversity, moments of challenge in life that, sometimes we take on this role of we're going to fix ourselves.
Yes.
We're gonna do it, and I'm hearing you tell this story, and you tried this and you tried that, and in between time you're praying and you're fasting, and nothing wrong with the praying and the fasting part, but it was like you were asking God to do something, but you weren't making the connection of what He needed from you on your end of
Right.
it, and so in God fashion, He had to allow you to go through. this storm, not because he was trying to humiliate you, not because he was trying to make life miserable for you, but he needed you to ride this storm out so you could ultimately come to an understanding, come to a realization of what he was trying to reveal to you in the midst of what you're going through. I mean, because you had two moments in life that you've already shared where you were allowing what you thought other people would say or feel about
Right.
it to deter you. First, it was your singing. Then you talked about, when we started getting on the subject of the hair, you talked about, yeah, I had this thick flowing hair and I loved it, and it was, you could just rub your hands all in up. So God will oftentimes take something that He might find you giving a little bit too much attention to, and use it as an opportunity to draw you nearer to Him. So He said, what would she do if I took her hair? Would she still honor me? Would she still love me? Would she still desire to be in a relationship with me? Or would she turn against me? Would she allow what she thought other people thought of her to cause her to go astray, to go into this dark place? Because
Yeah.
that's exactly what the enemy was celebrating, that when
Oh,
you were in
yes.
that season of depression, and not feeling beautiful, not feeling worthy, and all of the other negative emotions and thoughts that were going in your head. And God is on the sideline looking at you and saying, I need you to remember who you are, and the line of
Yes.
royalty that you come from, and who I created you to be, and that you do have value, whether or not you have a flowing head of hair or whether you're completely bald. That doesn't change who I created you to be on the inside, and you just
Absolutely.
need to know that. And of course, you need to understand, again, as we shared earlier, that the opinions about what everybody else think is not what matters here. And until you get that part of the lesson, I'm gonna let you stew, so to speak, in this storm until you figure it out. And glory to God, that's exactly what happened. You had
Right.
that aha moment, that awakening moment. You said, okay. And I love the illustration that you spoke of about the rain. And I think you're spot on in your interpretation of it. That it was symbolic of Him washing away all of
Yeah.
that self hate, that that misery, that pain. It was washing it away and just letting you know that you know all you needed to do all along was just rest in Me and just trust Me with
Yeah.
this, and not be so busy trying to hold on to stuff, and again worrying about what other people think about it and what they're going to say. Do you trust Me? Do you understand that I
Yeah.
do have your back? Has there ever been a time when I didn't have your back? So why, if you can't answer that there was a time that's happened, then what makes you think that now would be any different? And so sometimes He has to allow us to go through those moments in time to remind us to bring our focus back onto Him, what matters the most. And then from there, you can experience, as you shared earlier, you can experience that freedom. You can
Yes.
you can
Yes.
experience that peace, that joy, that calm. And now you're like, you know what? Well, you're staring in that mirror for the first time. You're thinking, what was I tripping about? I think ain't nothing wrong with this. Then I'm sure as the days and weeks and months went by, you started to jazz it up here and spice it up there, and okay, and now it's your signature. um
Pretty
you
much.
know
Yeah.
it's interesting because it's like, I kind of had a reverse situation, in the sense of, for years wearing my hair low, basically trying to hide any graying or anything like that. And then COVID hits, and my hair grows out, and then the next thing you know, I'm sitting there looking at this, and I'm going, again, kind of like what you talked about. What would people think? Will you think you're some old growing old man that's 1 foot in the grave, that kind of thing? Because those thoughts will play in your head until you understand. Okay, wait a minute. Who do I belong to? Whose opinion matters the most here? And then next thing you know,
Right.
I'm doing like what you were doing. Like, yeah, wait a minute. I might
Yeah.
be I might be able to I might be able to do. So it's just funny how God can use what seems to be the smallest of things, the things that when
Right.
that in retrospect, as time goes on and we sit back and start thinking about it, like, of all the things that I was tripping on, I'm making a big deal about this was it, and was it really worth all that? And we have to laugh at ourselves, like, okay,
Yes.
you know, it's just kind of a reminder that God does have a sense of humor and how He can just use those moments to again not only bring you into a revelation of what you needed to learn, but also
Right.
to be able to laugh at yourself and say, you know what, I'm not going to make big deals out of things that are not worth being a big deal for.
Right.
And even in those moments when I do have those big deal storms, because we're going to have them, instead of me trying to fix it, instead of me trying to take on that all by myself and make it right and change it this way and adjust that way, if I don't know what to do with that and it's clearly overwhelming, then I'm gonna go ahead and take it to him, let him handle
Yeah.
it. He's gonna graciously receive it from me, and then from there, all I got to do is just trust and be in obedience that, hey, I'm gonna let him do his thing. I'm gonna let him operate in his lane. He knows what's best, and in his perfect way, will and timing, he's gonna work that thing out, however that's supposed to look,
Right.
and here you are, fast forwarding into today, author, singer, songwriter, and all of that, and even to the author piece, as I shared at the top of the show for our listeners, here we are featured as distinguished authors, but it's like you had to have that season because it facilitates now a story to tell. You now have a testimony to share with other people, whether it's directly on the subject of alopecia or whether it's on the subject of dealing with adversity in general. Like,
Right.
how do I, as your book is, how do I breaking the shadows? How do I come out of that that dark space and embrace the light that's in front of me and stop, you know, creating these like self-made, pity parties, if you will, the victim mentality, taking our storms like as if that they're all supposed to be negative events instead looking at it from the way God looks at it and says, no, I'm using this as an opportunity for you to grow, for you to develop, for you to become
Right.
a better version of who you are, because that's going to allow Him to use you in a more expanded way. It's going to allow Him to be able to connect you with people who need to hear your story, and even in moments like this, even on my little platform or other platforms that are out there, all of those pieces connect together as an opportunity for somebody to hear your story, and knowing, or perhaps not knowing, that you could possibly be changing somebody's life. You could
Yeah.
possibly giving somebody that ray of hope that they needed to feel that moment that you were in. They're going through that funk right now, and your story is going to bring them up out of it. So that's why
Yes.
it's so important for us to go through what we go through, not just because it's something random to pass the time, but it's an opportunity for us to pour into others, being transparent and vulnerable in the sharing of our own story. So again, I appreciate you sharing as you
Sure.
have, because
Certainly.
this is huge. This is a big deal. It's bigger than what the crux of the story was about. It's deeper than that, and that's what I want our
Yes.
listeners to take away from it and understand how God uses those moments to for His glory, but also as an opportunity to bless us and equip us to be a blessing to other people.
Right.
So that's good stuff. Good stuff. So Carol, when you do find yourself facing challenging times, I mean, obviously what you shared was, clearly a major, season of darkness in your life. But sometimes the storms are heavy like that, and sometimes they're just the day to day nuances of life, just lifing type stuff. Nevertheless, I'm curious to know from you, when you do find yourself, if it's one of those days when you got a challenge, you got a moment of adversity before you, what is it that you specifically like to do to kind of helps you keep a clear and steady head, if you will, as you're trying to process and deal with whatever that situation is? Is there, certain routines, certain regimen of things that you like to do or practices that you like to implement that just kind of helps you in a healthy way um, deal with and face and work through whatever that particular challenge or moment of adversity is?
Yes. Well, I guess I'm a singer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my connections with God.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I minister to Him, commune with Him. And so I find myself a lot of times, of course, prayer, of course, reading the Word of God. But those are times when I can get at my keyboard and just worship and just sing. I mean, whatever pops into my head
Mm-hmm.
is what I'll sing. And it ends up being a songwriting session or something like that where he's pouring into me. And basically that's in writing the book, through that whole process, it was a healing journey for me. He used it as a healing journey for me because I always said I was never a writer. I don't really like to write because I do so much self editing that it takes me forever. I was working on my doctorate and I was going through what I do is write papers and then read each line. And before I
Hmm.
write another line, I go back and read the first line with the second line, make sure they flow together. Then I go to the third line. So it's just self, this self editing that I do. And so I never considered myself an author. And like you said, God has a way. And so through the alopecia journey, he led me to write the book. And in the back of each chapter of the book are original songs. So as I'm
Mm.
writing the book, he's pouring into me not only the words that to write on the paper, but he's also pouring into me the songs of deliverance, the songs of healing, the songs of victory, the songs of being an overcomer. And so that's what I do when I'm faced with adversity, when I'm faced with challenges. I don't have another outlet. I don't have a my best friend lives in Texas. My family lives in Oklahoma. My one of my sisters lives in Pittsburgh. So I really don't have anybody
Hmm.
but the Lord to run to. And it's usually that the music that really draws me into his presence. And I just lay out before him and pour out my whole heart until, and I've learned, and I hope somebody gets this today as they're listening. The Lord already knows everything.
Hmm.
And one scripture that has always blessed me and ministered to me and really broke some yokes in my life that when I needed to know the most, that I can be totally and brutally honest and transparent with God because He already knows. The scripture is in Hebrews and it says that we are naked before Him. We are exposed in His presence. And so when I come before God, I'm so honest. Lord, I'm this, I'm that. I did this. I didn't act the right way. I feel this way about this. I'm just brutally honest with him. And I've learned that in doing so is healing because he already knows. So I'm not hiding.
Right.
I'm not hiding anything. So that's what when I'm facing with challenges, when I feel like I want to do the wrong thing, when I want to lash out or talk back or uh, yeah, you know what we do. When I feel like I gotta handle stuff in my own kind of way, I just have to go to him and say, Lord, you know this about me. Please help me. So
Hmm.
I've learned that those things, those challenges, and just acknowledging that this is the way I am, Lord, and you know me, but help me, change me, fix me, helps me to make it through.
Love that. Love that. And I think the key thing that you said and all of that is just the importance of being transparent because like you said, when I'm talking to him, who I'm only kidding myself if I think
Yeah.
I'm hiding something, but that's the significance of the relationship with God is that while he already knows, and I oftentimes use this illustration, it's like a wife, expressing to her husband about, why don't you, tell me that you love me, and he may say, well, I love you because of this, because of that, because of the other. And then your response back might be, well, yes, all of that is true. And I know you do. It's just nice to hear you say it.
Yeah.
And so God is no different in that regard. He already knows what you're dealing with, what hurts you have, what fears you have, what's making you angry and feeling some kind of way. But it's something special when you on your own, voluntarily in your own transparency and your own vulnerability, come to him and just say how you feel. Because now you've already taken a God that loves you unconditionally anyway. And now you've given him even more incentive to want to just step in that situation
Right.
and work it out. So just so that you can be again reminded and confirmed of the fact that his words are not empty, that his love is not fake, but that he really does genuinely and authentically want nothing but the best for you, and for
Just the
you to be
best.
transparent and vulnerable and just saying, "Hey, I messed up or I'm dealing with this, I'm feeling some kind of way." Okay. Don't worry about it, daughter. Don't worry about it, son. I got you. And then he just does what he does, you
Yeah.
know. And again, every time that you follow that process, every time that I followed that process, it always has worked out. Not just worked out, but it's always exceeded the expectation of how I thought it was supposed to work out.
Right.
But when I went the opposite direction, when I tried to do it my way, when I tried to fly solo, when it's just the same with you, when you try to do it your own way and fly solo, that's when we tend to mess it up. That's when we tend to make a situation that may be uncomfortable, make it even drawn out longer than what it needed to be, and all of that kind of stuff. When all along, all we had to do was just say what's up, let him know, and then in our obedience, in our faith, allow him to take care of the rest and
Right.
navigate us through that storm. So I'm glad you pointed that out, and for our listeners to pick up on that as well. Just keep it real, you because a lot of
Yeah.
times people, especially people who don't have that relationship or maybe aren't used to having those conversations with God, they might feel like it has to be some type of formal presentation. You have to have these, many years of theology background and have the Bible memorized and all that. When all it is just a simple conversation of you know,
Exactly.
you just talking to your daddy, and just saying, this is what's up, this is what's up, and just keeping it real and just saying what it is and letting him again provide you that comforting, that guidance, that direction that you need as you're trying to process through that moment of
Right.
adversity, that moment of challenge. So, again, everything that you pointed out in this segment, those are key things that I want our listeners to take away from that, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, again, thank you for that. So, Carol, if you had the chance, as you reflect back on all your life experiences, good, bad, or otherwise, highs and lows, if you could sit across the table and speak to the younger Carol who had that season of life where she questioned her worth, her value,
Hmm.
maybe even felt some days that maybe God had forgotten about her, or that she was not living up to the standards of excellence or approvals of those around her, whether they were friends and family or whether they were particular strangers. What would your words of encouragement, your words of inspiration be to her that you think, had she known some things that you know now, that you wish she had knowledge of back then, that would have been beneficial to her, that would have been helpful to her, as well as to our listeners. I'm sure we have listeners that are tuning in who are in that stuck moment, that they've been living a life of wanting to seek other people's approval and feel accepted and being a part of the big picture and not really understanding, why is it not working out that way? What would be your words of encouragement to them again, as well as to younger Carol?
Okay, younger Carol girl, sit down. We got to talk, right? First, because we allow the opinions of others to shape us, they cause us to lack confidence in ourselves. So I would tell my younger self, do not listen to the opinions of others. Girl, you can sing. You don't care what other people say. Keep going and follow your passion. Follow your dream. If you love singing, do it and do a lot of it. Go to school for it, perfect it, do whatever you can to accomplish and achieve it. Because in accomplishing and achieving your dreams and what you like, builds your confidence. That's the first thing I would tell. The second thing I would tell is don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today. I went many years suffering. It was 30 years suffering with self hatred, depression, shame. If I know then what I know now, I would have took my wig off years ago. Years ago, if I knew that God was going to use me in the ways that He's using me now. And so I would tell my younger self, just do it. Do not worry about you think what people are going to say. If you think you're going to look a certain way, if you think you're going to say the wrong thing, whatever it is that you are doing, just do it. Don't wait, because if you never go after what you want, you'll never get it,
Mm.
because you never went after it. So that's what I would tell my younger self.
Very well said. Very well said. And even to our listeners, that same advisement that you gave younger Carol is the same thing that many of them can take right now and apply right away to their respective situations. Again, know your worth. And not
Hmm.
not allowing your life, your actions, your behavior to be dictated again by the opinions of others. That's not to say that it's not of value to have a small circle of individuals in your life who can give you sound advisement
Right.
and give you that proper encouragement and support and keep it real with you that if you're wrong that they don't have a problem telling you that, but they can do it in a loving way and an encouraging way. We're not talking about that, but we're just talking about
No.
the masses, especially when we think about the days and times that we live in right now, where driven by social media and the likes and the followers and the things like that, and too busy looking at in everybody else's yard and in everybody else's situations and comparing what we're doing with what they're doing and somehow measuring
Right.
whether or not we're good enough or what have you. God has specifically designed you to be you and to achieve what you're achieving, to connect with the people that He's chosen you to connect with. Don't automatically assume that just because you see someone in large crowds or in large spaces or they have the appearance of success or the appearance of good fortune. Don't get caught up in that, because you'll be really surprised if you knew behind the scenes, behind the mask that many of
Hmm.
them wear, how lonely, how depressed, how miserable, how unfulfilled many of them might feel, that in
Right.
ways that all the wealth and all the followers and all the likes can't adequately provide for them, can't adequately comfort them. And so and that was something my mom taught me very early on in life about don't ever be jealous or envious about other people, because you don't know what price they're paying
Exactly.
to experience whatever it is that they have. So don't automatically assume that they got this and that I want some of that. No, you might not want none of that. If you knew
Hmm.
all that was really a part of it, you'd have a different opinion about it. So don't be so quick to take yourself out of the lane that God has specifically placed you in. Instead, keep your eyes on Him. Let Him direct your
Right.
steps. And wherever that takes you, be thankful, be grateful for that, be appreciative of that, because He's never going to steer you wrong. So, if,
Right.
if, if no other reason, you following Him, you can trust whatever that outcome is. I don't care what you see around you, what you hear around you, what you think might be. If this is what He said is where you need to be, consider that a blessing. I in my years, it took me a while to get to that point, but I celebrate, God's knows.
Yes. Yes.
I used to be in my feelings about that, in the younger years, because you felt like He was trying to deny me of something, trying to hold my, take back my fun, my enjoyment, my pleasure, my no, no, because there have been some no's that He gave me, and while it didn't sit well in the moment, you fast forward and then something He reveals to you. Say, remember I told you that no back then, whether it was a job situation or something relational, something else. I'm like, ooh, I'm so glad you
Right.
said no on that one. I'm so glad I didn't see it. And it's okay, because He's gonna see some things that we're not gonna see, and that's what makes that relationship so valuable. That He can intercede even in those moments where those traps have been set around us to set us up, to destroy us, to distract us, and He's seeing it. He's like, nah, no, Carol, I need you to go this way. But I wanted to go.
Yes.
Nope. Trust me, you need to go this way, because what you think is over here is not what it appears to be. So
Exactly.
yeah. So again, everything that you said here is spot on, not only for younger Carol, but also again for our listeners. So that's some right now stuff that you can apply if you don't currently have a process or a way in dealing with those adverse moments. She's dropped you some gems that you can work with right away. So again, we don't want to miss out on that. So Well, Carol, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm so glad we were able to make it happen. Again, you've been a blessing to my listeners, been a blessing to me. I thoroughly have enjoyed your story, and thankful that you were kind enough to share it, share a little bit of snippet of your journey with us, because this is game changing, it's life changing, and again, I know somebody's going to walk away from hearing this story, and just have a whole new renewed mindset, a new approach to how they're handling the challenges and adversities of life, which is exactly what I was hoping to accomplish this evening, as you shared that, in the way that you shared this evening. But as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, before I let you go, we do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to acknowledge you, to lift you up. So if you got anything that's going on or coming up, whether it's professionally and or personally, we want to know all about it, how to support it, how to connect with it, how to continue to follow your journey, follow your path, and see all of the things that God is doing in you and through you, and again, just to be a part of that, and nothing more, just to be able to just keep you lifted up in prayer as He walks you through this journey and explore and exposes you to more and more things and individuals that you've yet to see, but he's already meticulously setting that path up. So what do we need to be keeping our eyes locked in on, Carol, that you got going on that we need to know about?
What am I not doing? Well, I got a lot of projects that are in the works.
Hmm.
I have a song. It's called "He Covers Me" that I'll probably release this summer. It is a companion of my book, Breaking the Shadows. So it's in one of the chapters. Uh, I'm going back in the studio with another song called Warriors. That one also is a companion of the book. So you can, read the book, be encouraged with the music as well. I am writing a devotional to go along with Breaking the Shadows. Haven't decided if it's going to be a 15-day, 21-day, or 30-day devotional, but it's in the works. Um, I am in the process of also writing a stage play about my alopecia journey. Uh, Christmas concert is coming up. I did my first one last year. And so I'm excited about another opportunity to be able to do that. Um, you can find me, pray for me, follow me. My website is www.carolchisholm.com. You can purchase the book there. My music is there, but you can also get my music streamed through Spotify, Apple, all digital streaming platform services. And of
That is
course, YouTube. And I have a new channel, my own artist channel on Avidity TV. So, yeah, follow me.
that is wonderful, wonderful. Again, I would pray nothing but God's favor and covering on all the works that you're doing. You got some exciting projects coming up, and to my listeners, definitely tap into that, support it, get her books, get her music, and just follow her journey. You can clearly see that she's about the business of doing God's work, and so you can definitely benefit from that. And I'm sure you even know of others that may not currently be tuned in to the episode, and but they need to be connected to her. They need to be following her, tapping into her products and services. So don't let that get away from you. Keep her supported, keep her encouraged, keep her lifted up in your prayers, because these are the type of individuals that we want to be behind of in our lives, and we want to make sure that we're connecting with and supporting of, because they're doing a work of God, which is so valuable, so important, so necessary and beneficial, whether it be directly to you, or like I said, to somebody that you might know that you could just pass that information along to. So again, Carol, it has been a privilege. It's been a pleasure having you. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed our conversation this evening, just the transparency, the sharing of stories, and with the hopes of inspiring and uplifting, as Carol has done in sharing her journey with you, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. We're trying to keep it raw, keep it real, keep it relevant. Not sitting here pretending like we got it all figured out, that we don't go through anything, that we don't have struggles in life, even as believers. We go through our pains and our sufferings and our challenges, and sometimes even get to a point where we have fears and doubts about how we're going to work through that thing. But at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
having yes, but at the end of the day, having a relationship with God is all that ultimately matters because He loves us unconditionally. He wants nothing but the best for us. He'll never let you down. And if you don't currently have that relationship, I'm here to tell you that today is a mighty fine day for you to make that decision right now to get connected, to be in relationship with Him, because I'm here to tell you it'll be the best decision that you've ever made in your life. And I'm telling you, and I'm sure Carol will co-sign on this, not sharing something with you that we heard about, something that we're telling you something that we've experienced
And we
personally,
know exactly.
firsthand. And so this is an opportunity you don't want to miss, and this is an opportunity that we're not trying to keep for ourselves. We've been called to share Him with others, and so opportunities such as this and many others are ways for us to do just that. And so, if you're not in relationship with Him, please make that decision. I strongly encourage you to do that. It'll be the greatest decision you ever make. You don't have to live life on your own. You don't have to go through those storms and challenges of life by yourself. It's not your job to fix everything or fix everyone. Um, Cast those cares, those burdens onto Him, and just watch Him do His thing. Again, showing you all the love, giving you all the comfort, all the support, all the encouragement that you can ever need in life. And not only will He be a blessing to you, but He will again equip you to be able to bless other people as well. So, with that said, remember here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, continue to fight that good fight. Continue to lean on God. Be in relationship with Him, being obedient to Him, having faith in Him that nothing is too big for Him to handle, nothing is too great for Him to overcome. Just trust in His ways and His guidance and His direction, because He will not lead you astray. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great rest of your evening.